Hello, everyone. I'm Richard Rabbat. I am calling from Boston. Unfortunately, my plan to get to Beirut and be part of that great event was disrupted Saturday. Everybody knows the events that happened, but I was able to turn it into a Zoom call. I hope you can hear me well. I'm Richard Rabbat. I am a product of the war in Lebanon. I'm also a product of AUB. I've been at MIT. I've been at a number of tech companies, including most recently Twitter, which is an interesting social network where lots and lots of conversations about communication, about things that matter to all of us happen. I'm currently I've recently started a company called Lighty AI, which is working on something completely different in the AI space. I have a few thoughts that I wanted to share with you. I'm excited to be a part of TAKminds, and hopefully we can not only have that conversation now, but please feel free to reach out to me as we have more conversations about this topic that's really important to all of us. Let me share some of the slides. We can I'll be speaking. It'll be hard for you. You won't be able to see me, but hopefully you can, the voiceover works well. So I'll be talking about digital spaces, online narratives, and really the idea is how can digital be used to promote collective healing. Here's a really, really high level agenda of the things that I will be talking about. I'll be talking about truth, dialogue and strife, misinformation, the use of algorithms to promote conversations, and then online barriers and connections. This is a colleague of mine back from Twitter. She spoke recently at Bloomberg, and I thought it was really interesting what she had to say. Let's play the video. I know the audio is going to be a little bit hard, but there are subtitles hopefully that will work as well.
I think we are sufficiently trained to not believe everything we read, right? What we are not sufficiently trained to do is look at images and video and listen to audio and have that same level of critical thinking. The question to answer is who gets to be the arbiter of truth? Should it be an independent body? It depends. Who gets to be in that independent group? Are they appropriately speaking for everybody in the world? We've not yet achieved that, a fully representative body that represents everybody in the world that will be able to confidently speak on every issue.
I mean, technically, that's what we have elected officials for, though, to some degree now.
In the U.S., sure, but I think right now we are having a bit of a crisis of democracy where people do feel like they're not being represented in their own governments. The other part I'll add is, do we want this content moderation to inherently be political? Because that's what will happen, right? People will be elected. 2 to 4 years later, new people will be elected. Do we really want the decisions on what content is and isn't allowed online to be purely political in nature? I know there's accusations that these companies make political decisions. Frankly, companies make capitalistic decisions. They don't actually make purely political decisions. If we move it into the hands of the government, we are literally making them purely political decisions.
So it's very interesting, when you hear about this, there's the concept of truth is very important, and it's really hard to say this statement is true and this statement is untrue. In many ways, truth is in the eye of the beholder. But when we look at issues related to dialogue and to strife, let's look at some of the topics that are really important here. So if there is political communication along lines across the aisle, then you can have more tolerance. But there's also the fact that you can polarize these conversations. We have a way today with the internet, with social networks, to really engage with folks on different topics But like, it's not only like at a certain level any longer. Like ordinary citizens can now have a voice and they can influence change. So the internet is the best democratizing tool that we have today that enables every person to have a voice, as opposed to only somebody that like represents your community, your political party, your country, your continent. And in many ways, the internet does help groups that would not have a voice otherwise to be able to congregate, to have conversations, and have influence on what's happening in the world. Now, the internet has the potential of bringing up the best and the worst. During the years of COVID, which we finally got out of, there was so much misinformation about COVID. I'm pretty sure you've heard some of it, and I'm pretty sure it has influenced many of us at a certain point. Things related to the number of COVID deaths, whether the COVID vaccine is safe or not. All the way up to conversations about like whether Bill Gates is putting microchips in the in the COVID shots so that like Microsoft can control us. But it also brings up the best. Black Lives Matter would not have happened without actually a Twitter in that case. The conversations about Black Lives Matter, when you're a population, a marginalized population that does not have a voice, the internet provided a voice, and people were able to hear opinions and that mattered to Black Americans in the United States. There was a counter movement about like All Lives Matter, which was trying to also, have its own limelight, and it didn't catch on. Turns out that Black Lives Matter, the hashtag, actually like enabled many people, a marginalized group to have a voice and to reach across the aisle, so that many people that like did not have the same experiences and and impact in terms of how their lives were, how they conducted their lives, like it created empathy across the aisle for many people that were of white, Latino, like other groups that were that did not know of like how a Black person felt like when approaching a police person, like that those things happened, and it became like the awareness helped bring up an improvement in how people discuss race in the United States. But there's also misinformation today. With the advent of generative AI, it's very hard for humans to control what AI does, mostly because AI can generate at a speed that was never could never have been done before. Like everything that we see today, like all the doctored videos and pictures, we could have done with Photoshop, but you could do it like one at a time. And now you can create millions of pieces of information, video, images, text, and spread them. And it's it's extremely hard today to stop that, because like we're not equipped to manage that misinformation at scale. I want to show you basically like a parody of, Biden and Trump, going over basically.
And as for Hassan Piker,
this is all doctored. This was all created through AI.
Who gives a fuck about that cocksucker anyway? He's probably too busy trying to cancel culture my ass or some shit. Believe me when I say this. Trump AI doesn't take kindly to little bitches like him.
And don't get me started on you, Trump. You think you're so tough, huh? But you're nothing but a two-faced, tiny-dick, limp-wristed coward who can't even handle a little criticism. These nuts.
So, same voice, same person, all created through AI. Imagine when you can do it for every person on earth and that information that's out there. Now, it turns out lots of people were like, okay, it's Facebook's fault, it's Twitter's fault, these algorithms are pushing for more polarization. It turns out that that's not really there's lots of studies that show that this belief is actually not correct. Turns out social platform basically end up showing you something that you already believe, and they're just basically are additional information that say that you listen to, and you're yes, it's exactly what I believe. And when you see something that's a counterpoint, you're well, you dismiss it because you're this is definitely something that is incorrect because it was pushed by some other party. And you can read some of this information. There's a lot of comments here that are important to how we have to view these social networks. Turns out algorithms don't actually have an impact on people's beliefs. They end up showing you content to engage you. Imagine if you're happy believing that there's no climate change. So if the algorithm shows you there's evidence of climate change, you just end up dismissing it. If the algorithm shows you something that says basically there's no climate change, you go yes, I totally believe it, it's correct, and you just move on with your day. And on the political side, typically people that are seeing comments from their parties, they associate that with positivity. If they see something that's from a different party, they end up looking at it negatively, and they'll read the same tweet, the same Facebook post differently based on their beliefs. Now, when you look at connections, it turns out there's actually really, really hard to create these connections. But if you look at a space that's completely different, self-driving cars, they are safer than humans. They're driving in many cities today. There are cars in San Francisco that drive without a driver. Self-driving cars will kill people. They will kill many less people than human-operated cars. But there's a lot of stigma about is the computer going to kill a person, even if it leads to 90% less death. The question is, are we going to allow this in all our cities and let these self-driving cars basically take us from one place to another, and in some cases get into accidents because these things happen. So the bar for AI for computers is much higher than what we expect from humans. And on the algorithm side, when you go back to social media, they're feeding us the information that we want. We want to hear, if we're a supporter of a political party, we want to hear the same stuff. And if they share with us information from the other party, we just dismiss it and move on. So a lot of it is actually going to be about how we think about the world and how we are accepting of other people. So there's an opportunity to create connections. Our responsibility to make these connections. It's not the algorithm's job to go and say, well, I'm going to reduce polarization of a certain, in a certain topic. If you disagree with vegans, if you disagree with right-wing religious zealots, if you disagree with tree huggers, the only way you're going to create, to actually have empathy for these people and to have them have empathy for you is by communicating, by learning, by listening, by asking questions. So we only learn when we listen, and to listen we need to engage. It's very important that we don't put ourselves in an echo chamber so that we can hear the same points of view that allow us to basically just convince ourselves that our beliefs are right. So if we look at like humanity, humans were not like the strongest. We're definitely not the fastest. We can't even fly. But what we are good at is about connecting. The human power is through the value of connection. Early humans in caves, extended families, villages, cities. Like cities are like where you have like the most density of humans today from a physical point of view. Digital takes it to 100x, maybe 1,000,000x more connections. When you had like only a few people like that could like solve a problem, now you have millions of people that can actually try to solve some of humanity's problems. Climate change, access to water, food security, but also and more importantly, understanding of others. If we, today on X, formerly Twitter, scientists share their research, their papers, and it reduces all the friction around like access to information that used to exist before. There's immense increase in innovation that's happening through the power of these social networks. And I really would like us to think of this as an opportunity for all of us to connect. So today, at the end of the day, think about a theme or a topic that you disagree with, and read and ask questions, and go across the aisle and ask questions. What do you think? Why do you think so? And in many ways, you will hear an opinion that sometimes is grounded in truth, and sometimes is based on ignorance of another party. And the only way for us to basically become better as humans is to learn to talk to each other and listen. Thank you very much.